5 likes. So.
Yep, hit the like button as you guys come in. Oh, it's doing that thing again. Wait. There it is. It does that sometimes. Now you can see.
Hey, Brent.
Carrie's in here.
Carrie, hello.
Got your Canada's in here.
This is the Great White North, eh? Kiss me, Florida. We were just there.
Yes, he actually just, I just got all his stuff packaged up. He ordered a Armor's bundle. If anybody is interested in an Armor's manual bundle, it includes a signed Armor's manual, one of our PVC patches, and one of our nice 3-inch vinyl SAS stickers. It's going to be a limited run of those just because I'm almost out of patches. So, and that's $65. If you are interested in that, you can email me at hbartacci@smallarmsolutions.com.
New York behind the lines. Victor, New York. Fort Drum. I trained some soldiers up there. I did some enemy weapons training, some maintaining weapons in the desert, and some threat weapons training up at Fort Drum a while back. 10th Mountain. Alaska. Hawaii.
He said Hawaii.
Texas.
Victor, New York, welcome. We both need to move. You just got to do it. I mean, you really just got to do it.
Want to be free. It's getting worse there. My mother just told me about the reassessments of the houses and the taxes that are going up. Wow. Seattle.
We had talked about doing it for 2 years. We were trying to sell our house and it just wasn't selling, and he was getting more depressed and
just had to leave.
I finally just said, let's just go and trust that the house will sell. The house sold a week after we moved. It's crazy. Been talking about moving 2 years. Yeah, you just have to kind of do it. It's scary. You know, change is always rough, especially when you're moving out of state and you have to reset your entire life up. But
best thing I ever did.
Yeah, thank God Chris is acclimated so well. He can sit there and enjoy crawfish season like a true Southern man. See, I just gave you accolades and you totally missed it. I didn't say Yankee. I actually said a good Southern man. Okay, guys, we're going to get started. I think enough of you have made your way into the chat. If you would like to ask a question, you can just pop it into the chat line. I do try to go in order, but eventually there's going to probably be 300-400 people in here, and I do start skipping around at that point. If you would like a guaranteed response, or if you would just like to donate tonight, you can do so by clicking the $sign, and you'll get priority over all the other questions coming in. Google, however, does take 30%, which is a lot. So our preferred method is donor box. That link is available on smallarmsolutions.com. I'm also going to plug it into the chat line here. Just put your question in the comment section, and I have my phone here, and when those come in, they will get priority. And then once they're done, I go back in and start trying to either go in order or start randomly pulling, depending on time. But we'll kind of try to get as many as we can tonight. I don't know if I've seen Steve in here just yet. Steve, thank you for your donation. I'll be looking for your question tonight. Adnan on Donor Box, he submitted a question earlier tonight. Thank you so much, Adnan. He has a question about the LMT L129A1 sharpshooter reference rifle that's sold to civilians. Does it come attached with a 4-prong flash hider from Surefire? Since Surefire doesn't sell that particular product to the commercial market, and the rifle is sent to the British mod with a 4-prong muzzle device.
It should. I've never had. When they've sent them to me, they've always been original L129s. But those are the same parts that they're using for the British, so I would expect that it would use all the same parts. And you have to buy those separately, and they do buy those for the British contract, so they would have them in stock.
And regarding the lobster tail extractor of the LMT enhanced bolt, LWRCI has a similar design for their own bolt as well. Did LWRCI copy that design patent from LMT, or are they both companies' enhanced bolts features their own separate designs?
That's a good question. I'm not sure if Carl went after them, because Carl did. There is one change between the two, and really what that really is the direction of the springs. One is straight and one goes at an angle. I believe it's the LWRC that goes at an angle instead of straight. But I'm not sure if Carl ever went after him, because I know he licensed the technology to Knights, but I don't know about LWRC. There's no question that was Carl's patent.
You could be living in Utah where our housing market is California bad because the damn Californians keep flooding in. Actually, the market in Texas is really bad right now. I just read that somebody paid $300,000 over asking price, and it was just like for a regular home. It wasn't even like anything, crazy. The housing market is like booming in Texas right now. We really need to move. He needs more space. He needs a lot more space. But it may be some time. Okay, I'm going to go up here and I'm going to start pulling questions. Question about the Vortex UH1. Should I rely on that for my MP5 utilizing a small mount, or use a B&T mount with peep sights for irons as backup?
I always prefer being able to have backup iron sights. Anytime you deal with optics, the batteries can go out. If they go out at an opportune time, you can lose a lot of time. So I would always go for personally, I would always go for backup sights, which can be used.
What do you think about the Colt EPR upper with a Centurion rail? I have it paired with a BCM enhanced lower.
I absolutely love Centurion arms. We have codes where you can save money with them. That was the first time that I know of that Colt actually listened to customers and they gave them a mid-length gas system. If this is the model that I'm thinking about, Colt did a great job on that. In fact, I have a video on that if you go back a ways. But no, it's an excellent upper receiver. They did a good job with it.
I'm going to plug those in right now. If you're interested in those codes, there's 3 separate codes for Centurion. One is for complete guns, 3% off. Uppers and lowers, I believe, is 5% off. Yes, and then everything else on their website is 10% off. So that's there in case you are looking at anything on Centurion. Hopefully, stuff's starting to get back into stock again. Thoughts on the 6mm arc? I
have had one here for a while, thanks to one of our guys on here. My problem is being able to get ammunition. I am waiting on ammunition here from Hornady. Unfortunately, I've had this barrel for quite some time. I did some preliminary shooting with it, but I only had a couple boxes, and that wasn't enough to really do anything with it. I've had ammunition on order. It looks really good. I think it has better potential than the 22 Valkyrie. But as I said, I'm looking forward to testing it myself when I get my hands on some ammo.
As an advocate for the LMT, I'm assuming this is just supposed to be BCG, but he has EBCG. I wonder if it would be interested in doing an updated review which tracks the generational changes to the design. I believe they're on their 5th gen by now.
Really, the patented features have not changed. There's some slight geometry changes. There's a change that was made to the back of the bolt carrier, so you could use their their miniaturized stock. They milled that out. Last I saw, they're now using chrome plating instead of the nickel boron type that they were using before. But the reality is, the patented features have not changed. So I'm not really sure 5 generations. Excuse me. I'm not really sure 5 generations. Again, there's been some incremental changes, but none that really affect the performance of it.
My armor's manual is wrinkled and stained with CLP, just the way I like it. I think it's the way it's supposed to be, actually. We probably could rub some on there and it'd be more authentic.
Yeah.
Just finished printing out a 3D printed AR lower. Never installed a buffer tube onto a lower before. All I need is a castle nut wrench, correct?
Yeah. There's torque specifications, but I don't think I would do that with a 3D printed one. I think you could do that hand tight, because I think you would break that thing off if you tried torquing that down. That you at the back of the receiver.
Do you think the CZ75 was entered into the M9 trials could have made it to the finals?
No, I don't. I don't believe that it had the features, nor the track record. It wasn't the standard CZ75. The other thing was too, they were looking at a striker fired gun too. I don't believe that was a CZ75 they put in. I'd have to look that one up. But no, it was not. Didn't even. The only two that finished the preliminary testing or phase 1 testing was the SIG and the Glock. Those are the only two that made it to the first downsize. Again, they didn't finish phase 2 to do the rest of the important testing, but nothing else made it. I think if anything the CZ would have had that would have even come close, it would have been the P10.
What weight carbine buffer would you recommend with a rifle length gas system running quality ammo?
Oh, in a perfect world, a rifle length buffer, that would be ideal for it. If not, you would probably want to go with one of the Voltors, which is designed specifically for that. And those generally are H3s or the H4s.
What is your opinion on Colt now?
It's stagnant. They brought back the Anaconda again. They've not done anything that's going to help them survive. I don't know what they're planning, what's going on with CZ, what the CZ's plans are with them. But it's still status quo. It's still bringing back. It's still not putting anything out that's new that they can mass produce to sell to foreign governments. It's still stagnant and not being run correctly.
Do the few LEO Colt that were not marked, quote, restricted have any value? They were built immediately after the crime bill.
Quite frankly, I prefer not having the LE marks on them myself. It really depends on what you like. There are people out there who really get off on those. I prefer not having the LE marks on them. The only thing about the LE marks is, if it's got them on there, that it was made prior to the loss of the government contract. So those are all original Colt parts that were made as per TDP. That's really the benefit for as far as I'm concerned. Because you do know that, but it's really up to my friend Michiko, William over at Michiko. He's like me. We don't like the law enforcement restriction markings on them. We prefer just regular M4, which they're not even doing that anymore. Now they're all just carbine.
What's your opinion on the SIG Springfield lawsuit over the magazine patent?
I'm not familiar with that lawsuit. I had to look into that.
Thoughts on Haenel rifles? I'm probably pronouncing that wrong. And why did Germany cancel the Haenel Mark 556 contract?
They canceled because the HK claimed Haenel was violating HK patents. If you were to look at the Haenel rifle, people thought that it was basically a Caracal rifle. No, it's not. If you look at the Haenel rifle, that is, for all intents and purposes, an HK416. You look at the gas system, you look at the bolt carrier, you look at everything. It's a de facto HK416 at a much lower cost with some changes to the lowers. But there are a lot of things on there. For instance, the gas system, HK's got a patent on that. The gas system is used in the Haenel or the the 416, and the 716. I'm sorry, the 416 and 417. That's the gas system that falls under the patent of the G36. I do believe that was one of the patents, and I believe there was a couple other ones too that they challenged, and that's what lost them the contract was the fact there was litigation for patent infringement.
Do shotguns still have a place on the modern battlefield, or are they obsolete?
Oh no, they certainly have place. You look at entry, close quarter battles, breaching doors. And if you're looking at a really close quarter battle, I tell you what, you can't beat the destruction of double-aught buck. Absolutely it does. It just depends on what shotgun you're looking at. Again, for me, there's only one shotgun I own and would ever want to own. That's the Millennium 1014. That is a lethal combination with 9 rounds of double-aught buck in it.
Would using a heavier, stiffer recoil spring reduce or cure the issue of damaged optics in the SCAR 17S?
No, it has nothing to do with the recoil system. It's the harmonics, the way the rifle's set up, and the way the barrel is, and the way everything is on there when that barrel closes.
The new FN Evolves LMG claims to have a barrel that never needs changing. Do you know any more on this?
No, I find that extremely hard to believe. I'm not aware of any unobtainium steel that does not wear out and does not issue with gas port erosion, with throat erosion. Unless there's been some super alien secret that's been left out in the industry that I don't know about, I have a very hard time. I mean, they've made barrels better. What they've done with the M60E barrels has been incredible. For as far as the durability of those, but for as far as something never wearing out, never heard of it.
Does the M110 SAS use the PRI 308 gas buster charging handle? I took a look at one in our HHC arms room, and it looked identical.
No, they have something that's similar, but it's I do believe it was under license because the technology that the big gas buster has, that was patented. So I do believe that there's a nice makes their own version of it, but I do believe it's under license.
What do you think of ultrasonic cleaning?
The only time I've ever used one was when I was helping the military out, the Air National Guard in Wisconsin, when they came back from Iraq with guns that were covered in sand. That's about the only time I've really ever used them. People like them. That's fine. It's one of those things where you got to strip the guns down completely, and you got to lubricate the whole thing. And depending if you don't know what you're doing, you can make a mess out of aluminum. For as far as taking the dye out of the aluminum and coming out with aluminum that's it's back in raw colors again. So I really don't mess with it. I don't really have a need for it. But and a lot of people who like it, they use mineral spirits in it, stuff that's not going to damage any of the receivers. They do use them to clean suppressors, but again, you have to be careful of what kind of chemical you put in there.
Michael on Donor Box, thank you, Michael. Any upgrades you could recommend for the FN 509 series pistol for reliability?
Reliability, not really. FN does not have a large supply of aftermarket. Their guns are pretty good to go as they are. Reliability, I don't think there's really anything out there. The gun's made for military use. It's just more accessories, lights and things like that.
Joey on Donor Box, thank you, Joey. Can you put a pistol slide or the frame in an ultrasonic cleaner? And what about an AR bolt?
Yeah, absolutely. The steel parts aren't generally the problem. It's the aluminum parts. The Glock frames, you're not going to rust a Glock frame. It's not going to happen. But again, it's one of those things where for me, I shoot a lot, but not enough that's going to make me want to go out and do that.
Dustin on Donor Box, thank you, Dustin. How close to Colt original is the gray on the Brownells retro receivers?
It's similar, but it's weird. When you've seen enough Colts that are from that time period, when you feel the texture of it, it has sort of like a chalky feeling to it. It's not smooth. The finish on the Brownells, for the most part, is a smooth. It looks more like a paint than an anodizing. It's similar in color, but the texture. If you were to get your hands on a Colt SP1, one of the original SP1s, and you were just to feel that texture on it compared to the new one. The thing is nobody uses that finish anymore. It's obsolete. And that's why it is so difficult. Why there's only a couple companies in the country that can do it. Again, Victor over at the U.S. Anodizing is undoubtedly the best. Now, I did talk to Roy over at Brownells, and from now on, because of the difficulty in getting the anodizing, all those gray guns are going to be Cerakoted. They're not going to be doing anodizing because it's just too hard to find somebody who can do it and do it right.
Colt wants to know, I haven't heard much online about the Counterpoise Buffer system. My father has one in his XM177 clone. What can you tell us about them?
Say it again. What's right?
Counterpoise Buffer system?
I need you to give me some more information on that. That name does not ring a bell. The only buffer system I know that was different was there was a very short period of time they were experimenting with hydraulic buffers, but it never went anywhere. They just weren't reliable enough. We're looking that up. Maybe I should know by a different name.
What's a weird name? It sounds like a tampon. That's what comes up. There's no, we can click on images and see if there's anything.
I don't. I've never used one of these. Unfortunately, I have to do some research into seeing what it actually is, but I've never actually used one or saw one. Looks like it got some kind of a valve on it.
He says the buffer has a sliding weight in the center of it.
Well, they all do. They all have sliding weights in them. There was way early on the Commando buffers that they had a similarity to like the 9mm submachine gun. They were steel, and they had a central weight in them. Didn't last very long. It wasn't really needed. They were able to when they calmed it down with the proper gas ports for ball propellant. It wasn't needed, and that's where you got your 3-weight carbine buffers from. You used the switch from ball powder to ball powder caused havoc before the congressional hearings on these guns with a cyclic rate. If you figure you're looking at over 1,000 rounds a minute with a 20-inch rifle, try to imagine a carbine length gas system where you're looking well over 1,100-1,200 rounds a minute. And between bolt carrier bounce, extraction too early, failures to extract, and then God forbid once you got gas port erosion there and it started speeding it up even further, it was a mess.
Is an unfired Colt All-American 2000 pistol worth getting for an investment?
Brent, why don't you answer that question?
And this is for Jim Man.
Yeah, I borrowed one from Brent. Brent is a true Colt collector of all things. For me, I wouldn't. You couldn't give me one. Even for collectors, because the gun just. It's not a good gun, period. Somebody who really, is into that history, I would definitely put that question over to Brent, and because again, he's a collector. He's the one that loaned me the one for my test. He probably would have a less biased look at it than I do.
Thoughts on the 2021 HK MR556A1 with the new medium contour barrel?
It's certainly closer to the weight you're going to get for the standard 416 with the 14.5, which is similar to it in weight. But the reality is it's still not chrome plated. And that's what people really, really want. It wasn't so much the contour that people didn't like. They didn't like the fact that it wasn't the chrome plated barrels that HK is known for. I have a regular MR556. A1. I have no intention of swapping it out for one with a lighter barrel. I'm quite happy with the way that it is. For somebody who wants to use it more as a patrol rifle or a lighter weight rifle, it certainly is better. The intent of that rifle was for more precision accuracy, which is why HK said that they wanted to go with the heavier contour barrel, because they wanted to make it more of a target rifle versus a combat rifle. Same reason they gave for wanting to put for the pivot pins that you have to use use a tool or bullet tip to unlock. They said to tighten everything up to make it that much more accurate. it's really nice that HK is offering some options, but the reality is the only thing I would get rid of my MR5564 is if they came out with something that was lighter with a chrome line barrel.
Brent said, I would say if the approach is quote an investment, then no, it isn't an investment piece, in my opinion. As a historical piece, the Colt 2000 is definitely a neat historical piece.
Thank you, Brent. Like I said, he's definitely a lot less biased when it comes to that. I'm more of a historian on the mechanical end of it and mechanical failure of it, where Brent appreciates much more of just the gun being Colt. So thank you for chiming in on that, Brent. We appreciate it.
I have a 10.3-inch 5.56 upper that eats any brass or poly-coated rounds, but fails to extract and takes the rim off any uncoated steel case rounds. Any ideas what that would be?
Don't use steel in an SBR. Very simple. For that to work properly with steel cased ammunition at that short of that son of a bitch has to be over gas like you can't believe to make it work with those. If it don't work with steel, don't use steel. That's what I would tell you. These guns are meant to. Most of these guns are meant to fire with NATO spec ammunition, and if you were to say that was a 10.3-inch barrel that you bought from Colt, and you told them the problem you were having, and you sent it in, Colt's going to go back and they're going to test that with M855 ball, and if it works, they're going to send it back to you. They're not going to test it with all the other ammunition because the gun's designed around 5.56 NATO. This ammunition that you're looking at across the board, it's different. You have wide varieties of port pressures and chamber pressures, and there's a certain amount of chamber pressure and port pressure that gun needs to operate correctly. So if it's not working with that ammunition, don't use it. The gun's not defective.
Zachary's asking, what years did you work at the Monroe County Crime Lab, and what was your experience with RPD? Have you heard you were instrumental with the implementation of PMAGs and still use them to this day?
Well, I worked at the Monroe County Crime Lab, was it 2000?
Sophia was a year, so 2004.
2004 to 2009, around that time period. I worked in the crime lab, but my time, I donated a lot of my time to not just RPD SWAT team, but Monroe County Sheriff.
It was more than 2009.
Yeah,
it was after Rocco.
Yeah, it was something like that.
It was way after Rocco.
I worked a lot with RPD SWAT team, and that was some of the greatest groups of guys. It was horrible how the department was not funded. The SWAT team wasn't funded. They had stuff that was so substandard. It wasn't just PMAX. I got those guys tens of thousands of dollars worth of free shit. I had a lot of gun manufacturers and accessory manufacturers that basically owed me favors.
He would just sit on the phone and call.
I would call in and say, hey, I got a SWAT team that has nothing. Can you donate some Churchill County ACOGs and some EOTechs and stuff like that? And actually, I don't really recall anybody ever saying no to me. Then when I went to work for Colt right after that, I was able to get my boss to have Colt donate all the parts so I could rebuild all of their M4s because the stuff was so antiquated because there was no money for repair. They didn't have anybody who was trained to do it. Nobody kept up on it. That SWAT team was pretty damn incredible.
After he was done with it, they were pretty incredible.
Well, I mean, those guys in general. I mean,
oh yeah, for sure.
The city of Rochester, you may as well be in downtown Baghdad.
Yeah,
those guys were doing shit all the time, and they never got the credit. It was always amazing how you'd see like the New York State Police would have the best of all equipment, but they didn't do anything. All they did was to show up, to the local cities and the towns and county SWAT teams and back them up. But here the state troopers were with all the state of the art shit, and then the guys who actually are doing the real work didn't have it. It was terrible. I was very happy when I left. Finally, the SWAT commander, Aaron, was able to find grants, and with those grants, they were able to re-equip the entire. In fact, at Colt, I sold them a whole bunch of M4 Commandos. In fact, I remember at Colt where I would even get these guys upper receivers, brand new upper receivers, 10.3-inch barrels and 14.5-inch barrels to replace the stuff that was all shot out. But they were finally able to get money to get all new M4s. They got some LWRC Reapers, and then they switched over to LMT, the MWS for their sniper rifles. It was really a great group of guys.
Yeah, and for me as a wife, I was getting very frustrated because Chris tends to donate a lot of his time to everyone, including, that's why Carl Lewis has him on speed dial and Mark Westrom at the time when he was heading Armalite. And so he was always on the phone and he was always like solving problems, but he was never getting paid for anything. And, he's a struggling, forensic scientist. And, they didn't make a lot. And we had all these children, and then he would call, we would be out, and he would say, he would get a phone call and he would be like, we have to go home. And I'm like, why? And he's like, well, because I have some guns that are being dropped off. And we would go home, and all of a sudden these squad cars would come up, and it became so regular that we had some new neighbors that thought we were like basically running a meth lab in our basement, because these guys were coming in, and police officers don't come in with rifles and a gun case. They come with them slung over the shoulder on each side and carrying them in. And I'm like, what are you doing? And he was like, Heather, you don't understand. Like, these guys are busting into crack houses and their guns aren't even firing. He was like, they couldn't even afford an armor. Like, they had guns that didn't even work. And so by the time he was done, these guys had the best outfitted guns and accessories. And my proudest moment as a wife was when he told them that he was getting this award at the policeman's ball. And, we show up, and I'm thinking that there's going to be all these awards. No, he was the only award for the entire ball. And all of the SWAT guys got up and stood behind him. And as a wife, that was just, couldn't be more proud of my husband.
And let me tell you, an ass kicker, the crime laboratory that I worked for gave me shit every time. They were not supportive of me assisting these agencies with anything that wasn't crime lab business. I got written up. You're not going to believe this, but this is a true story. I got 4 cases of PMags that were donated to a New York Reserve unit that I was working with. I rebuilt all their M4s and all that stuff for them before they deployed. But by the time they got there, I called to have the guys pick them up. But the problem was their stuff was already in containers and shipped. They couldn't take them. I called Drake up at Magpul and I said, look, these guys here, unfortunately, they got here too late. They couldn't take them. He goes, I said, you'll be sending these back to you? He goes, no. He goes, find them good homes. So what I did was I made bundles, and I think there was like 10 to 12 local departments, SWAT teams, city, county, and then several ones that I called up, and they came by my house and they picked them up. Well, we work closely with ATF there, and I called up ATF. I said, here, I got some magazines. He calls my supervisor up and says, hey, what's with these magazines? And I got written up for giving these things out on county time. Now, I gave these away. I didn't charge anything for them. I got written up for it. When a SWAT gun would go down, I'd say, can I leave an hour early from work to go over to the academy and fix the guns for them? They told me no. Basically, I couldn't help the police officers with their guns. Somebody had to get shot first before I could do anything. But I had no cooperation. In fact, I had major opposition, but I always did what I thought was right.
And that's why when he wanted to go work for Colt, I said that's probably a better fit for you anyway.
It was. I found it much more rewarding working with those police officers than I did working in the crime lab.
Raymond says, donor box, no question, just haven't caught the stream in a while. Thank you guys. Thank you, Raymond. MagTech M80 versus PMC Bronze 308. First AR 308, trying to decide between these 2 rounds. Not enough ammo around to try many types.
Well, there are 2 different kinds of ammo. The M80 ball is a full metal jacket military load. The other round is probably going to be a 308 load, which is more powerful with a more accurate barrel. With a more accurate bullet. So by all means, if you want precision, you go with the bronze. But if you're just plinking and just burning through ammo and by all means go with the ball ammunition. I don't use a lot of ball because the only time I really use ball is if I'm doing function testing for the most part. If I want groups, I'm using Black Hills 175 grain or 168 grain OTM or something along those lines. And again, 308 and 762 ammunition is different. The 308 ammunition is hotter. It's the opposite of the 5.56 versus 223.
Sorry, I'm just having a little southern crisis. Is it hot in here to you?
A little bit.
It feels warm to me, and it's it's not kicking on, and it's not hot enough for it to. I hope the AC is not going. Let's see. Do you trust the ETS Glock magazines for CCW?
Certainly. Absolutely. The only issue I've ever had with ETS magazines was not a fault of the magazine. I did a review on the CMMG Banshee that took the Glock magazines. No, I'm sorry, they took the SIG magazines. They would not fit in the lower receiver. That is the only problem I ever had. But with the pistols, ARs, everything, they work absolutely excellent. I've never had any issues, and I definitely would recommend them. I've used them for years. In fact, I was around when they first started up. And every time I get it, in fact, I'm getting ready to do a review on a VP7, no, VP9. Sorry, VP9 HK. Of course, I'm having problems with the battery, but I contacted them and had them send me out a couple of their ETS magazines to test in that. I've used them in the SIG the P320. They work awesome. Yeah, if I have a gun coming in that they have one, I give them a test.
Are flat wire springs a good upgrade for AR-15?
No, they're not worth it. It's not a spring that is under that much stress. I see no reason to get braided or flat wire springs. The gun's designed to work around a specific spring, especially if you get a gun that's made as a complete rifle made by a military manufacturer. Leave it alone. They just spend the money on something else, a flashlight or a rail system or something that's worthwhile.
Tuning an AR-15 for a left-handed shooter with a suppressor. Do you have any tips for gas blowback? I've tried a lot of things and nothing works very well.
The best thing you can do for gas blowback is again the gas buster charging handle. But for as far as that going in your face, the only thing that may help you with that is if you were to go with an external piston type, where you'll have less gas. You still will have gas, but it'll be less. Probably what I would recommend you is you get yourself some of the combat goggles and wear those so it doesn't get into your eyes. I mean, you'll still breathe in a little bit, but you'd have your eyes covered and you're not going to have that issue.
What is the best years for Colt M4 or AR-15 that matter in regards to TDP and real military issue or LE on how they were produced in lines, etc.?
2011 was the loss of the contract. So I would probably say 2013 and forward is when you started seeing all these parts become outsourced. You started getting mixes and matches of parts where you didn't know what you were getting. But over the last few years is when it's been really a crapshoot. You don't know what you're getting.
Andy on DonorBox says, my wife and I recently had our first child. Congratulations. I know it's going to be a few years, but do you have any stories about teaching your kids to shoot? Thanks for all your work. He said this donation should cover a bacon and cheese Whataburger meal.
Thank you. My kids, I took my oldest daughter out. What was she, 6 or 7?
Yeah, she was about 6 or 7.
My son, his first time, he was around the same. It took him a lot longer because he had problems with the noise. My daughter did. It took a while.
We also should preface it by saying that Chris never started them really on 22s. He went right for the M4s, and
the only one of my children that ever started 22 was my second daughter. Ava Bella, she didn't like the heavy or the loud noise, so she would shoot my Taxol. When she goes out again, there's no more 22. She's going to use the real thing. And my youngest, she scares me.
Yeah, it's funny because Stella's 10 and Stella has not been out to the range, and she always tells Daddy, I want to go to the range, but then she makes little guns with her hands and goes pew pew pew, and then he's like, I'm not putting a gun in your hands.
Not yet with her, but the other ones, the thing is this has been my profession my whole life and all their lives. They see guns all the time. They come in my office and get things, and it's nothing to them. They don't phase them. It's just like Daddy's tools.
Yes, that's what I used to always say, because when living in New York, Texas, not so much. You don't have to. I mean, you still have to kind of worry about it as a parent, with other kids. But in New York, it was definitely much more prevalent. And, like I would have play dates, and just like he would service these rifles, he would tell me, hey, oh, just by the way, they're going to be dropping off some guns. Just tell them to go down to my office. And I'm like, I have people like coming over. And then I would forget. And then here comes the police cruiser. And I'm like, I'm sorry, I forgot to tell you, but my husband deals with guns, and they're going to his office, and there's nothing loaded. And, I've never been a huge gun person. This is, what he enjoys. But as a woman and a mother, I never worried about it. I think if you raise your kids around guns, they are completely desensitized to it. My kids have always been taught to respect guns and not to touch them. And they've never been curious otherwise. And when they get old enough, they say, I want to go to the range and I want to try this. I definitely would start them with 22s. I think that's probably the best thing to do, because then they'll enjoy it more instead of, that big kick for them being small. But having 3 daughters, our daughters have been just as into it as our son has. But our kids, and sometimes people, especially people that are not big gun people, they have a really hard time understanding how we can have all of these guns. And, my husband has never had them, completely locked up. He generally is rubbing down a rifle every single night, and there may be one on the floor as well. Our kids are just, they step over them. They don't even care. So if you raise your kids around guns, they'll respect them. They'll know it's,
it's like anything
it's
else.
A tool.
If it's forbidden, it's what you get the curiosity.
Great topic. When your kids were toddlers, what did you keep beside at night? A preferred AR or no round and chamber, but with a loaded magazine?
I was next to a Glock 30.
Yeah, he's generally had handguns, but he also would go away because, as most of you guys are aware, he's traveled all over the world, servicing rifles and training military and police all over the world. And so there was times he was gone for a month, and it was just me with 4 kids. I never had any help. And he would be like, what would you like? And it would be like going to a gun store. It'd be like, would you like an AK? Would you like an M4?
Well, she always liked AK-74. So.
And then he would bring stuff in, and he'd be like, this one has a scope and a light on it, and you can just like put the laser on. I'm like,
and pretty much where I settled on was I had a 45 gap with a Glock light laser combo. So that way, if she was to hear something that was gone, she just flipped that light on. She would have both a light and a laser.
Yeah. And I liked that. I mean, I never worried about it with my kids. My kids just knew those were daddy's things, and we don't touch daddy's things. And they really could have cared less. Yeah. So you get us talking about kids, and unfortunately, we can talk about that for a while. If you could update the design of the AK-74, what improvements would you make and why?
Well, the reality is there isn't much you can do with it. The operating system is the operating system. The AK-74 is already enhanced over the AK-47. If you look at the physics of it, and the balances of the weights, the bulk carriers and what, it is more reliable on paper than the 760x39 version, just based off of that. The really only way you can enhance it, the muzzle brake is awesome. It does a wonderful job. It's the lightest recoiling military rifle on the face of the earth that's modern. Really, the best thing that you can do with it is put on a good stock that's going to be comfortable, to get decent optics. If they really wanted to improve them, they would come up with a way where you had a more stable scope mount. That's one of the things. Certainly, better handguards that don't heat up would heat up as much. I mean, that's something that I would like to see, is a better handguard that you don't have to wear a glove, to fire more than a couple magazines. Really, I own 4 AK-74s. I absolutely love the AK-74s, but all my AK-74s are stock military. They're how they would have been issued. I don't have any modern ones that have all the latest and greatest stuff. I like those for what they are. They're a combat rifle for a third world army. If you look at some of the newer AK-74Ms and some of the newer AK-12s and things like that, you can see what people have done. They've messed around a little bit with the recoil system. It doesn't really make a lot of sense messing around the recoil system on an AK-74 because there is no recoil. They do at some points try to put suppressors on them, and again, you don't have subsonic. I've never seen subsonic 5.45, so you're still getting the supersonic crack. But the AK system overall, there is not much you can do with it. As you see, those guns have not changed. It's only been the accessories. The mechanics of the guns have stayed the same. So there really isn't that much you can do.
Sean says he grew up tripping over guns and he thinks he turned out all right.
Yeah.
That's the thing that, scares people is with, guns and kids is they, hear kids shooting other kids and, because they have that gun that's locked up or it's up in a closet or whatever. And it's, with our kids, it was like, oh, you want to go to the range and shoot it? Well, let's go to the range and shoot it.
That's also more, you get kids whose parents want to quote protect them and don't teach them about guns. When they go over to somebody's house, where there is a gun, they're the ones you have to worry about. It's not the kids who live there. It's when somebody comes over who hasn't been trained. Parents think that they're doing their kids a favor by keeping them away from guns. No, they're not.
Then it becomes like, oh, look at this. Yeah. And, you want to play with it. And,
Yeah.
Could you do a video of your thoughts on the NGSW 6.8 rifle? Do you think it will go somewhere?
I can't get my hands on one to show you. That's the biggest thing. I read the same things that you do. I'm not aware of any of them that are available for people like me to review. I have a hard time doing a video when I don't know any more than you do about it. We would read the same things. And if the time comes when the stuff becomes available for commercial use where I can actually test it, yeah, I certainly would. But for the most part, you're seeing the same stuff that I am. And I'm no more of an authority than you are because I've not gotten my hands on it.
Randy on DonorBox says, no question, just really appreciate you guys and you freely sharing your knowledge.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Colt on DonorBox wants to know, oh, here's the link to the buffer system I mentioned earlier. The rubber portion is under spring tension. Face-up buffer has a hole for a weight that allows movement of the weight into the rear of the BCG. Also, I've seen a lot of variation in finish of old PWA receivers. Earlier ones look like paint. Ladder serial numbers appear like a plastic, like anodizing. What's the deal here? We have a lot of PWA loaders from the 80s. Do you need to see it?
Yeah, send it over to me, but I'm pretty sure I know what it is now.
Well, that's the link to it.
I have them. Yes, that particular buffer was, it's MGI. That was designed by Mac. I'm trying to remember Mac. I've got one in mind. Basically, you have a rubber bumper in it. Now, one of the things that he claimed, the Mac McQuinn claimed, was that it didn't matter what caliber you shot it in. I've shot that with 5.56 up to 450 Bushmaster. It worked fine. The only thing I have never done with it is try it on full auto to see how it works, because there's a difference between how something works semi-automatic only versus full auto. So that's one thing I haven't really tried it. Is it something that's necessary? No. The reality is, especially depending on what gun you buy, you sometimes got to tune the operating system, the buffer, to the barrel and to the ammunition that you're using. Those are all things. And are you using it in fully automatic? That's where my true question is with this is how it work on fully automatic, because you have to have that dampening that's for the bolt carrier bounce. And looking at the design, I don't really see how it does that. The MGI Hydra, what it was designed for by Mac when it was a commercial gun. I don't know if I ever saw any that were made in full auto. So the buffers make a difference. I mean, if you also look at what he did with a 9mm, he put the standard carbine buffer or that in the 9mm and beat the hell out of it. My MGI Hydra, I have a Hydra and I have the newer MWS by Winter Weaponry. I put in one of the buffers that I designed at Colt in there for the 9mm because you were beating the hell out of that thing by using a standard carbine buffer in it. Again, it's one of those things. If I would have had to buy it, I probably wouldn't have. I would have just looked at what the calibers I was using and what was necessary to operate those with the ammunition.
Magnan said the same thing with alcohol in Europe. Kids don't go nuts with alcohol because they grew up with it, so it's nothing special. See, that's the way we are with our children. Our daughter is 18 years old, and my father-in-law was one of the best guys I've ever met in my entire life, and he was old school Italian and taught me everything I know about wine. And he always believed that kids, by the time they're 13, should be able to have wine at the dinner table. And so our daughter has had wine with me, and she's next weekend will be graduating with honors and has an academic scholarship to Baylor. So, definitely wasn't because we gave her wine or allowed her to drink.
Oh, that's one of my last trips to Germany. I saw a bunch of 16, 17-year-olds drinking beer in Nuremberg. In Munich. they weren't obnoxious or anything like that. They weren't
our son's
overindulging.
16 and he drinks a beer occasionally, but also in Texas you can give your children alcohol. So there's a place that we go for crawfish, and it's BYOB, and so we give our kids alcohol or a beer while we're eating crawfish as a family. It's not, and so that way, my daughter's not going to go to college and go crazy because, I mean, really, she can go home and drink with mom for free. Fernando on Donor Box, thank you. He said, what buffer weight for suppressed 14.5 carbine length rifle? I have an H1 on my lower already. Would that work, or do I need a new one?
Well, with a buff with a sorry, when you're using a suppressor, you're boosting things up. I probably would look at an H2 and take a look at your ejection pattern. If you can go with an H2 and it's not landing you at 3 o'clock or 4 o'clock, because the thing is the gun has to work suppressed and unsuppressed. Once you take the can off, you're losing a lot of pressure, so you have to find something that's going to be right in the middle there, where it's going to work both ways. And it's also going to depend on your ammunition. 5.56 ammunition versus 2.23. Really, what you have to do is settle on a round, and then fire suppressed and unsuppressed, and then see what the heaviest buffer that you can get to work, and the bolt still lock back on the last round.
We did that one, right?
Yes.
Okay. How did you get into the firearms industry?
There's a video that I have that says, "Who the hell is Chris Brown?" or "Who's Chris Brown?" Who the hell? Who? And that basically gives you my entire thing. This is all I've done my entire life. I've been doing this since I was 9 or 10 years old. This is all I've ever done. I've never had any other hobbies. And professionally,
doesn't watch sports.
Yeah, and professionally, everything I've done has always brought me back to it. So I've always worked with firearms. I grew up with a father who had guns, a grandfather who was a retired soldier who served World War II, Korea, and Vietnam. And for some reason, my interest has always been the M16 in Vietnam since I was like 9. I was always obsessed with the M16 in Vietnam, and still to this day. Even though a lot of the work that I've done has been global war and terror, it's been in the Middle East. My true interest is still the Vietnam War. That's really what's always interested me.
But one of the really interesting components of that is that his father was into guns and did have a gun safe and had these things, but that did keep the loaded gun in the dresser drawer and didn't, expose Chris to them. So one day he went and pulled the trigger and put a hole. I think that hole is still there.
No, they fixed that hole. Well, growing up in New York, that young, it was a different time. But once my interest took, my parents were supportive. All the way through it. My dad never thought that I was actually going to make a career out of my hobby. Financially, this hasn't been awesome, hasn't been that great, but the old Chinese saying, the man who works for passion is richer than the man who works for money.
Well, that's true because you like what you do.
Yeah.
When did DPMS introduce the DPMS pattern 308?
That was in the mid 90s, I believe. They wanted their own pattern that was separate from the SR25. I believe it was probably the late 1990s. I think it was a mistake. The AR pattern, AR-10 pattern, upper receiver, lower receiver is stronger.
Cajun Catfish says that he's jealous that you had crawfish.
Oh, it was awesome.
He's been enjoying a lot of crawfish
these
this
freaking
year.
little crawzillas. I mean, there's some huge ones.
Yeah, it's really the prime season right now, so they're pretty massive. I think 2 things wouldn't work. If I didn't believe in guns or be so encouraging of his career, our marriage would never work. And if he didn't like Southern, crawfish and things like that, it probably wouldn't work.
I got a little excited to say today was tax stamp day for me. I got my tax stamp back for my CZ Scorpion. So I had to go pick up my standard CZ stock for my FFL this weekend. So my CZ Scorpion looks like it's supposed to, not with that damn brace on it.
He was so mad though their printer wasn't working right, so it wasn't printing off the right colors. Do you have any thoughts on the Young manufacturing chrome BCG and bolt that eliminates the cam pin through the hole and replaces it with a socket type?
That's not young manufacturing. That has been done, unless I don't know if they're doing it now, but that was patented by Frank over at POF. He did it first, and then LWRC came out with it for the enhanced bolt carrier group that was part of the M4 PIP program. It is a much better system than what we have. It's more expensive. Basically, what you're doing by having that with that one piece key, you are eliminating any possibility of a gas leak ever coming out of it. So the only place you can potentially get gas leaks now is through your gas rings in your front sight, so in your front sight base. So instead of having a potential gas loss through the bolt, the carrier, and the front sight base, now you're eliminating one of them, so now you only have two potentials.
How long did your stamp take to come in?
April 18th was when it was put in, and it came back today.
So quick.
Yeah.
Are you proficient in night vision?
No. Back in my day in the Army, that went to squad leaders. That wasn't an issue to everybody in general.
He's proficient in the way that one of the things that the joys of our kids growing up with having a gun enthusiast dad is he would always have these toys, and he would bring out the night vision, because when we lived in New York,
thermal.
Thermal. When we lived in New York, we had a lot of land in the back of our house, and the kids would come over and they would look at the thermal night vision.
Be able to see all over there and everything in the background.
And smoke grenades.
Yep.
He would light at the
neighbors.
I'm sure the neighbors didn't really like it, but he would get all different colors. Colt on Donor Box, Sneaky Colt. He said, "Don't want to spam, but I think Chris got to my question on the finished variations of PWA lowers from the 80s. Poor connection. Again, thanks for the info, and I love these Q&As."
PWA lowers from the 80s, I had a couple of them. They were jet black. They were actually what you would see now. We're back in those days, Colt was still doing the charcoal gray. Bushmaster was doing a charcoal black, but the PWA those were jet black. A smooth, glossy jet black.
What websites do you frequent to keep up on firearms news, or do you just rely on personal relationships?
I do research like the rest of you guys do, and then when I find something of interest, I'll contact friends in the industry and do research, have stuff sent to me. I get lots of emails from people all the time telling me about new stuff. I have a lot of different ways where I get that, just because of people I've known all the years, and a lot of you guys will say, "Hey, have you heard about this?" I saw a question in here. People are asking about Glock's new rifle, and they put a patent in for it. I didn't have a chance to see the patent, but they put a patent in. So who knows when they're going to start producing or whatever. But it was interesting because you go back all those years. They were Glock was talking about doing this going back to the late 90s. And Mr. Glock always told them, he said that I don't want a rifle unless it's as reliable as my pistol. And that pistol is a hell of a lot more reliable than a rifle, especially extended use. Obviously, just because you're using a 9mm instead of a 5.56. So I'm really curious to see what they come out with.
That will be interesting.
We'll see what is going to keep with that, because Glock's got to do something. Glock is falling so far behind the 8-ball right now, with not really changing. You're still getting the same basic gun that you did in '85. They've made some updates to it, but the gun's pretty much the same. You have to modernize. So this could be an attempt for them to, bring out a new product that's not the same thing they've been doing for the last 30 years.
Yeah, generally every single night he sits with his ginormous iPad and reads and goes through stuff. I mean, he literally dedicates every single day of his life to research and like reading, and yeah, his phone does go off a lot with information from various places. So I think it's a little bit of everything from all over.
Networking is important. That's how I try to bring you guys the most up-to-date stuff that I can. But it's nice being able to, be in the inside of the industry like I've been, where I can get access to stuff that most people can't.
My aunt and uncle told me they were considering getting a handgun. What do you recommend for older people? I don't think they could manage the Glock tabs for disassembly, but I don't know yet. At
that age, if they're, my guess is they're not going to be going to the range and doing a lot of practice. A hammerless revolver. That way you don't have to worry about cocking the hammer back and cocking it forward. You don't have to worry about anything. You just pull the trigger. Chances of anything going wrong is only going to be if it's a dud. Then you have it rotates again. For somebody who's older, who's not going to dedicate their time to training, I would definitely say a hammerless revolver, double action only.
Well, guys, we're going to shut it down for tonight. We have a child that has to be picked up from work.
Yes.
But thank you guys for joining us. Hopefully you'll see us next week. But thanks for joining us.
Thank you very much.
Don't forget to hit the like button as you exit.
Appreciate it. You guys have a good night. Thank you.